So the natural question to ask is how do we quieten in the voice of the gremlin or the inner critic in our heads? Welcome to the Midlife Reinvention Podcast, a podcast helping women in career and life transitions achieve clarity on their next steps so they can transform uncertainty into an energizing next chapter. I'm your host, Kavita Ahuja, and the founder of It's My Time Now Coaching. If you're wondering what's next in your career or life, you are in the right place. Through solo and guest episodes, you'll gain practical tips, tools, and inspiration to help you uncover blocks, gain confidence, and be, do, and have what you want. I rediscovered myself after the age of 50, and I know you can too. It's my time now to help you do just that. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. What fears are holding you back from achieving your dreams? These fears stop us from realizing our full potential. And in this episode, we explore how to overcome these barriers and build a vision for your future. In this episode, you will discover the difference between external and internal blocks, learn about the 4 types of internal blocks that hold you back, and learn practical techniques to quieten your inner critic or your gremlin and turn self-doubt into self-confidence. Tune in now to learn how to face your obstacles with courage and transform your inner critic into a powerful ally. Hi, my friend, and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Reinvention Podcast. To my American friends, I hope you had a lovely Memorial Day long weekend. Today, I will be discussing the importance of facing your obstacles. Building a vision for ourselves can be so inspiring, but often we stop short of realizing that vision because we are faced with obstacles that stop us in our tracks. There are many things that stop us in our tracks, and one of the main ones is fear. I'd like you to stop and ask yourself right now, what fears are holding you back right now? Over the next few episodes, I will be breaking down 4 types of obstacles, what they are, and what we can do about them. The main characteristics of all of these obstacles or blocks is that they are created in our own minds. I love this quote from Marcus Aurelius, who said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So before we can face our obstacles with courage, we must understand what these obstacles are. We can call these obstacles or energy blocks, or things that stop the flow of positive energy. They are both outer blocks and inner blocks. Outer blocks are those which, even if we change our belief about the obstacle, it doesn't change the actual situation. I'll give you an example. Maybe you're interested in applying for a particular job, and that job requires a PhD, but you just don't have it. That's an outer block. The path then becomes, do I really want this job? And if so, shall I get my PhD? Inner blocks, on the other hand, are just that, blocks that we place on ourselves. And inner blocks can be categorized in 4 ways. The first one are called gremlins, or our inner critics, which is the inner voice that tells you in one way or another that you're just not good enough. Number 2 are assumptions, which are expectations that because something has happened in the past, it will happen again. The third are interpretations. These are stories or opinions or judgments that you create about an event or a situation or a person or experience, and that you become and you believe to be true. And the fourth are limiting beliefs. And these are generalizations or stereotypes or an idea that you learned and you've accepted about yourself or about the world or about people that limits you in some way. You can think of them as external beliefs that are taken as truth. Today, let's focus on the first of these inner blocks, or our inner critics, or our gremlins, as I like to call them. I'm sure you've heard of an inner critic, and no doubt we all have them. I certainly do, and she rears her ugly head to me often, even to this day. Mind you, she shows up less and less now. So, an inner critic or a gremlin is that, again, inner voice that tells you in one way or another that you're not good enough. This inner voice judges you, criticizes you, or demeans you, whether or not it's justified, actually. And gremlins are often formed in childhood as a way to protect ourselves from feeling embarrassed or ashamed or rejected or hurt. They can limit us from taking chances and living our fullest lives. While the gremlin truly just wants to keep us safe, our egos interpret the gremlin's messages as some form of, I'm not good enough. And not understanding the gremlin and its messages keeps us limited and causes us to play small. The gremlin usually shows up when you're feeling insecure or uncertain or unmotivated or afraid, or even if you're trying to get ready for something new. It can be like an overprotective parent because it's trying to keep you safe by keeping you in your comfort zone to protect you from failure. In fact, many of us are so used to living with the limitations of our gremlins that we don't even recognize our gremlins when they appear. But everyone has a gremlin, and the way to uncover it is to ask yourself what messages come up that cause you, even for a moment, to hesitate in life, moving forward in your life in any way. So, what are some examples of gremlin messages? These could be, for example, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not experienced or qualified enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not valuable, I'm not deserving of love or success or whatever that might be, and I'm not worthy of whatever that might be. I am not important. I am not strong enough. I'm not persistent enough. What are some of the gremlin messages that are showing up for you right now? Have you ever thought about where these gremlin messages are coming from? Before I get into some methods to beat the gremlin, I want to stress to you that these gremlin messages you are hearing are perfectly normal and often may take the form of criticism, frustration, or disapproval about your actions. It might sound like you should, or why didn't you, or what's wrong with you, or why can't you get it together? This actual self-talk is different for each of us, as is its frequency or its intensity. And also, if these voices continue or sound like a broken record, then it's probably your inner critic or your gremlin. While our inner critics may never completely disappear because we are always faced with different changes or challenges throughout our life, the way to reduce its influence is by adjusting how you engage with that inner critic. So I'll give you a personal example. For me, that gremlin message of I'm not qualified enough is my most prominent message, inner critic message. You see, I come from a very traditional Indian upbringing, and I was always taught in that upbringing that the belief that one follows a path of education and sticks to that in their career. So when I transitioned from a long-term and stable career in the pharmaceutical industry to become a coach, pivoting from that path was not seen as done or not the traditional path to follow. So as a result, I began to internalize these beliefs, and my inner critic began to tell me, you're not qualified enough to do this new thing. Who do you think you are? You should stick to what you know. Of course, that voice inside stopped me. In fact, it stopped me for several years to make the transition. It limited me and kept me small. Are you going through a similar situation in that maybe you are contemplating a career shift or you're just not happy with what you're doing right now? If you really think about it, what is stopping you from moving forward? It was not until I was able to lessen that gremlin's message in my head and change it to believe that I was actually qualified enough to do that thing that I was able to move forward with confidence. So the natural question to ask is, how do we quieten in the voice of the gremlin or the inner critic in our heads? One of the very powerful ways to quieten in the voice of the gremlin is to actually name it and put a picture to it. By doing so, it lessens its power. When you name and put a picture to your gremlin, you begin to depersonalize it from you. It is not you. It is an external or internal voice which shows up when you are about to make a transition or a change in your life. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to draw a picture or bring out a visual representation of your gremlin. It should be a physical representation which you can actually see and visualize. Next, I'd like you to name the gremlin. Try not to use the name of a person close to you, but a different name that may evoke an emotional response. Next, when you begin to hear the gremlin voice, stop and acknowledge its presence by mentally or verbally calling out the name you gave it and say to it, "I see you are here again, and I acknowledge you are here trying to protect me. Thank you for your concern, but I don't need your protection. I've got this." Then, physically remove your gremlin from the scene. This can be done in a variety of ways. You can put her or him into a box and close the lid. You can gently shove her off your shoulder. You can picture her voice receding into space, or you can simply turn down the volume in her voice. Whatever tool works for you. By physically removing your gremlin from the scene and saying to her or him, "Thank you for your concern, but I've got this," your gremlin will begin to visit you less and less. As you get good at recognizing and acknowledging the presence of your gremlin, you can actually use it to shift your thoughts. For example, you can tell it, "Why don't we try and use this energy in a different way? I believe I am qualified enough or confident enough or pretty enough." Use the gremlin energy in a positive way to push you forward, not hold you back. So how does this exercise feel for you? I'd love for you to try it. I'd love to see what your gremlin looks like, and if you try these methods to quieten them down in your head. I'd love you to send me a message and share. Send me an email at Kavita at itsmytimenowcoaching.com, and I'd love to hear what came up for you. I'll tell you who my gremlin is. As I mentioned earlier, several years ago, when I was embarking on my career path, on my new career path, my gremlin showed herself to me time and time again. You see, in my previous career, I followed the path of education and gaining the qualifications to excel in my corporate career. I got 2 degrees and I was continually tested in my career and passed the tests with flying colors. When I began to feel unfulfilled in the career I had been in for over 20 years and considered leaving it, my gremlin would visit me every day. Her name is Shakuntala, which is an Indian name, which is quite a stern name. And she is an older Indian woman with a stern, hard-looking face, and she's scowling and she's wearing a bright orange sari and looking very disapprovingly at me. She would say to me, "Why are you leaving the comfort and safety of this job? Are you crazy? You are at the top of your field and so qualified. Why would you dare to leave this and go into the unknown when you're not qualified to do anything else?" Shakuntala is my "I'm not qualified enough" gremlin, and she sometimes still shows up when I am embarking on anything new. When she shows up, I recognize when she arrives. I notice her and acknowledge her by name. For me, Shakuntala sits on my left shoulder, pointing her long, thin finger at me, shaking it at me. After I acknowledge her presence, I physically brush her off my shoulder and tell her, "Thank you for your concern, Shakuntala, but I've got this. I actually am qualified enough to do this. So either you get on board with me or leave." This exercise may seem silly to you, but I promise you, by utilizing this exercise and others that I take my clients through, your gremlin will visit you less and less. Try it. I'd love to hear how it works for you. shoot me an email at Kavita at itsmytimenowcoaching.com and let's share. I'd love to hear what you came up with. If you found these insights about your gremlin or inner critic useful and would like to learn more, you can download the Negative Energy Blocks Guide in the show notes, which also provides you with practical exercises to limit the blocks in your way so you can move positively forward in your life. You can also discuss your particular circumstances with me on a free one-on-one coaching session. Just email me again and let's chat about what gremlins you are facing. And also, again, share your picture and name of your own gremlin. Again, you can email me at Kavita at itsmytimenowcoaching.com. I hope this was helpful. Until next time, my friend, stay well and continue to move forward despite the gremlins in your way.